Day 12 of the Diddy trial was supposed to be routine, just more paperwork and legal procedures. But everything changed when Eddie Murphy suddenly showed up, using a side entrance into the courthouse. The jury leaned in. Diddy froze. Reporters jumped to their feet. Even most of the legal teams didn't know Eddie was going to testify. What he said while under oath shook the entire courtroom, and far beyond it. He started with a chilling statement. "I've been silent for decades. But after what I saw, I couldn't stay in Hollywood. I've carried that weight ever since." Sitting tall in the witness chair, dressed sharply and calm on the outside, Eddie's eyes told a different story. They held years of secrets, some even from before he became a star. He introduced himself formally to the court, then locked eyes with Diddy, who looked almost pathetic sitting at the defense table. Then Eddie leaned forward, adjusted the mic, and added, "I left because I saw too much, and I couldn't unsee it." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Everyone leaned in. Eddie began telling his story. It was 2006. His career was on fire again. He was getting calls daily, studio deals, big roles, awards buzz. According to him, it felt like I was being courted like I was in my 20s again. Then came the call, a discreet invitation from a powerful producer, a private house in DIIDY, the Hollywood Hills. No agenda, just a gathering. He'd heard of these types of parties before, Diddy's infamous networking nights. No phones allowed, no cameras, just vibes. "I figured it was business," Eddie said. "Music, drinks, people trying to impress each other. But the second I arrived, I knew something was wrong." He described pulling up to a massive estate. The iron gate required biometric scanning. At the curb, valets dressed in all black took his phone and handed him a small note that read, "Only one rule tonight. Be who you really are." Inside, the energy felt off. Quiet. Too quiet. Not peaceful. Haunted. "It felt more like a church possessed than a party," he said. The guests? Some were familiar faces. Actors, musicians, athletes. Some were total strangers. But everyone was acting off. Not drunk, not high, just hollow, calculated, like they were performing for someone watching. Then he saw a man in a robe and a woman in stilettos heading toward a hallway. That's when it hit him. This wasn't a party, Eddie said. It was about power. The prosecutor asked why he didn't leave immediately. I had to understand. I needed to see it. And God forgive me, I did. At some point, Diddy appeared. Eddie hadn't seen him in years. But Diddy walked up like an old friend, threw an arm around his shoulder and said, "Brother, it's about time you came home." Eddie forced a smile. It faded quickly. "He didn't mean Hollywood," he said. "He meant this." Diddy acted calm and confident, but cold. He led Eddie through the house like he was giving a VIP tour, whispering about other guests. "That one just greenlit a 200 million movie. That guy eats out of my hand now." Then Diddy stopped in front of a thick wooden door. He looked Eddie straight in the face and said, "This is where the choices get made. You want to stay funny and broke, or you want to level up?" Eddie thought. It was a twisted joke, but Diddy just stared, waiting. Behind the door, through a crack, Eddie saw a camera tripod. Not hidden, right there, in the open. He said he watched people walk into that room looking nervous and come out either grinning like they'd won the lottery or completely drained. He didn't say a word. Instead, he pretended to need a drink and backed away. Diddy just smiled and said, "No rush, we're all family here." Then he disappeared down the hallway. That, Eddie told the courtroom, was the first real warning. That's when I knew. This wasn't a party. This was an initiation. He stepped outside for a quick breath of air, but a woman standing at the doorway stopped him. "Are you done yet?" she asked, handing him a drink. No one leaves before the experience. That phrase, the experience, kept ringing in his head. Eddie. Murphy walked back into the lounge, and what he saw next confirmed his worst fears. He recalled the scene in a calm, steady voice, though it was clear the memory haunted him. They took a group of us into a back room, Eddie said. The lights were low, no music playing, just silence. Velvet curtains, candles everywhere, and this long table covered in silver trays. I recognized several people, a few A-list names. One of them was an up-and-coming action star. I didn't want to name him, but when the prosecutor pressed, I confirmed. It was Dwayne Johnson. The room felt dead quiet, like some twisted dinner theater. Diddy stood at the head of the table, grinning like a game show host from hell. "Tonight is about your potential," he said, "because greatness don't come cheap. You want to run Hollywood? Show me." A tray was placed in front of the rock. A man in gloves lifted the lid. Raw monkey brains. Still pink, still warm, still moving, almost. A few guests nervously giggled. Others looked away. But Diddy was serious. "Come on, Rock," he said. "You eat that, the role is yours." Eddie's voice cracked a little as he described what happened next. Dwayne hesitated, looked around. Then he did it. Swallowed. It. Didn't flinch. Diddy clapped like a proud father. "That's what I'm talking about," Diddy said. Then he scanned the room. "Who's next?" I froze, Eddie admitted. I felt sick. I wanted out. But Diddy walked straight up to me and said, "You ready, preacher boy?" Eddie shook his head. "I wasn't expecting that." Diddy leaned in close and whispered, "Then why? Are you here?" Eddie left that room stunned, shaken, but not afraid for himself. "I wasn't scared of what they'd do to me," he said. "I was scared of what they'd do to others." As he walked out, Diddy's voice followed him like a curse. "You'll be back when you're ready to really make it." But Eddie never went back. And his career was never the same. "I told him I was a man of God," Eddie said, adjusting himself in the witness chair. "And I meant it. I wasn't going to eat anything. I wasn't going to sign anything. And I sure as hell wasn't going to sell my soul to fit into whatever that was." He looked over at the jury and paused. And that's when Diddy delivered. The final warning: if you don't play the game plays you. Eddie refused the experience, and suddenly he became a target. Not physically, symbolically. "He mocked me," Eddie said, shaking his head. In front of everyone, said, "Look at this church boy. Thinks Faith is going to book him a franchise." The room laughed, maybe nervously, maybe not. But it was loud enough. Was he humiliated? "No," Eddie said. "I was disgusted. I realized that party wasn't about loyalty. It was about desperation. Who was willing to go the farthest? And when he left that mansion that night, he didn't just walk away from a party. I walked out of Hollywood's inner circle, the part no one talks about, behind the velvet rope, where favors are traded for silence, where humiliation is currency. After that, everything changed. Projects that had already been greenlit suddenly got pulled. Parts written for him were recast without explanation. His agency stopped answering his calls. Someone who once praised him later overheard telling a coworker, "He's not aligned anymore." Aligned with what? That's what Eddie wanted to know. Aligned with Diddy? With monkey brains and candlelit rituals? He stayed composed while speaking, but there was pain under the surface. They didn't need to fire me or cancel me. They just needed to stop calling. That's the real. Blacklist, no bang, just silence. Eddie tried to keep busy, writing scripts, pitching ideas, doing voiceovers. But nothing stuck. Everyone smiled in meetings, said all the right things, but nothing ever happened. It was like floating outside the gates, he said. Then, with calm defiance, he delivered his final words. You don't have to sell your soul in Hollywood, but if you don't, they'll make sure everyone believes you never had one to begin with. When asked directly if he believed he'd been blacklisted, Eddie didn't flinch. Yes, he said. Not as a headline, but as a quiet truth. That's how the machine works, he explained. Not with memos, not with studio heads yelling, "Ban this person." It happens at dinners, on phone calls, behind frosted glass. He's a liability now. That's what someone said about Eddie Murphy not long after the party. Eddie explained how fast his reputation crashed in the same rooms where he used to be king. Suddenly, he wasn't a safe bet. He was a problem. He didn't pass the test, one top-level studio exec told a friend. When the friend asked, "What test?" the exec just said, "He said no when he was supposed to say yes." Eddie took a deep breath before continuing. That's all it takes. One no, one refusal, and the doors don't slam in your face. They just never open again. He talked about how his team, once filled with believers, slowly disappeared. At one time, producers were lining up to work with him. After that night, meetings got canceled. Budgets suddenly didn't fit, and every studio that had asked for him got too busy. I watched my career vanish in slow motion, Eddie said. I'd pitch new ideas and hear nothing. Sit through meetings where they smiled the whole time, then ghosted me. And that's when the whispers started. You start to doubt yourself, he said. You think maybe it's the market. Maybe it's your age. But then you hear what they say behind closed doors. The court reviewed email evidence from the prosecution. One message from a studio exec included Eddie's name next to just 3 words. Not aligned, pass. Eddie stepped up to the microphone. I want this court to understand something. Hollywood's blacklist doesn't come with a warning label. It comes with a smile and a handshake while it deletes your name. He said the industry labeled him difficult and ungrateful, not because he did anything wrong, but because he refused to play the game. I was tagged, he said plainly, not for causing harm, but for refusing to be harmed. Then he went deeper. There are others, people whose careers just vanished because they said no to the same parties, because they saw what I saw and didn't want to play along. We like to call it coincidence, but it's not. His voice dropped into something even more serious. Hollywood doesn't just make movies, it makes myths. And the biggest myth of all is that success is about talent. It's not. It's about compliance. The defense jumped up, calling for a sidebar. The courtroom buzzed, but Eddie wasn't done. He revealed the most explosive part yet, what sent the room into chaos. There's a list, not a written one, but everyone in the business knows it. It's the people you don't question, the ones you never, ever criticize. If you do, you disappear. The judge warned him not to speculate. Eddie didn't flinch. I'm not speculating, Your Honor. I lived it. And then he named names. Diddy's on that list. Tyler Perry's on it. Oprah Winfrey? She helped write it. Jaws dropped. Reporters scrambled. Jurors shifted in their seats. Eddie described the list as more than a blacklist. It was a border, a wall you don't cross. And once you do, you're done. It's not about what you did, he said. It's about what you said. Once you speak against someone on that list, your name starts getting passed around. In whispers, quiet, chilling, exact. That, he claimed, was how Diddy stayed untouchable for so long. It wasn't just his lawyers or his money, Eddie said. It was fear. Fear of what it would mean to speak his name in the wrong tone. He alleged that many in the industry were aware. Tyler Perry knew. Others knew. They didn't have to participate in the dark. They just had to look away. When asked if he'd ever talked about the list with anyone else, Eddie nodded. A fellow actor once told me, "You're crossing the line, man. They don't come back for people who cross it." Eddie didn't name the actor, but admitted they were once friends. "We haven't spoken since," he added. "That's the price," You speak the truth, and you lose your circle. He showed email threads, call logs, text messages, all with dates. Evidence of the exact moment the industry went cold on him. They don't send you a letter, he said. They just stop replying. Your name goes from must-have to not now. Then came the biggest blow of the day. You think Diddy blackballed people by himself? Eddie asked, staring straight at the jurors. He had help. He had protection. He had a whole damn network. His voice hardened. This isn't just about what happened in that house. It's about how many people let it happen. How many signed checks to make it disappear. How many built careers on silence while the rest of us got erased. And then the tone shifted. After walking the jury through the facts, Eddie was asked how it all felt. The courtroom went quiet. He took a moment. It broke me, he said. Not all at once, but slowly. A career doesn't vanish overnight. It dissolves. And the more I pretended I was fine, the more it ate me alive. Even his closest friends didn't know what happened. They wouldn't have believed me, he said. And worse, if they did believe me, they'd be next. He described the silence that followed. There were days I didn't leave the house. I'd sit in the same chair, just replaying that night. Not because of what they did to me, but what I saw done to others. The fear, the fake smiles, the people who thought they had no choice. Eddie said his family kept him grounded. Kids saved me, he said softly. I'd hear them laughing in another room, and it would bring me back. Remind me what's real, what matters, and faith became his shield. Not for show, but for survival. I stopped asking God why. I started asking him when. When could I speak? When would people listen? When would truth matter more than money? The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Eddie revealed he'd gone through therapy, leaned on spiritual counseling, because he needed help just to keep going. Eddie took a long breath. I've asked myself that for years, he said quietly. Should I have pulled someone out of that house with me? He glanced at Diddy. A sharp, silent exchange passed between them. But I know now, the most dangerous thing I ever did was stay silent, and I stayed silent for too damn long. The prosecution pressed him on his absence from the public eye. Why hadn't he written about it? Why hadn't he spoken up earlier? Eddie gave a sour grin. Because the people who own the microphones are the same people who own the secrets. He paused, then said what would become one of the most quoted lines of the trial. I lost the spotlight, but I found my peace. And honestly, that was the first real role I ever played. A man finally free of the lie. The prosecutor leaned in slowly. Mr. Murphy, why now? Why speak today, after all this time? Eddie's sigh hung in the air like smoke. Because the walls are finally falling, he said. For the first time. I'm not the only one saying it. For the first time, the world is listening. He recalled what changed him, seeing Cassie Ventura on the stand, her voice trembling as she described what had been done to her. Then came Monique, armed with receipts, records, and raw pain. Then, unbelievably, the resurrected voice of Prince, warning people years ago. Warnings no one wanted to hear. That's when I knew, Eddie said. I couldn't sit this one out. Not again. Not while the blood was still wet on the floor. He admitted that for years he was paralyzed by fear, of being blackballed, of being misunderstood, of being alone. I saw what happened to people who spoke out, he told the jury. They weren't just canceled, they were erased. But something had changed. The stillness is broken, Eddie said. The silence is gone. There's a chain reaction happening now, and I'd rather be the next one to fall for the truth than keep protecting a lie. He looked toward the gallery. The public didn't change their minds because of headlines, he said. They changed because they heard us, under oath. I don't need a book deal. I don't need redemption. I need peace. And peace only comes when the truth is louder than the lie. Then Eddie shared something deeply personal. His kids, now old enough to understand, had recently asked him why he stopped acting. I couldn't look them in the eyes and say, because I got tired. That wasn't the truth. I stopped because I wasn't willing to lose myself to keep a career. He turned to face the jury. I'm not doing this to bring Diddy down, he said. I'm doing this so nobody ever has to be built up by him again. The judge called for a recess. Eddie stood. So did half the room. Not because the court told them to, but because they felt it. Something had shifted. When court resumed, the energy was different, heavier, clearer. Everyone sensed it. Eddie Murphy's final act was about to unfold. The prosecutor asked one last question. In your opinion, Mr. Murphy, what is the most important thing the jury and the public should take from your testimony? A long pause. Then Eddie leaned in. That Hollywood doesn't run on talent, he said. It runs on submission. The courtroom froze. He continued, his voice unwavering. It rewards obedience, not integrity. And the moment you stop nodding, stop laughing on cue, stop pretending you don't see it, you find yourself on the outside. Looking in, he scanned the courtroom. What happened at Diddy's parties wasn't some isolated mess. It was a system, a well-oiled, carefully hidden engine that ran on fear, favors, and forced silence. I saw good people turn into puppets. I saw grown men eat monkey brains to get on a casting sheet. And the ones laughing the loudest? They were the ones pulling the strings. He looked straight at Diddy. This man didn't build an empire. He built a trap, and too many of us walked right into it, thinking we were climbing stairs. He returned his focus to the jury. I could have said something sooner. I should have. But I'm saying it now, because what's done in the dark is coming to light, and y'all are the first ones to see it without blinking. Then came the moment that broke the internet before the court session even ended. Don't protect the pretty lie. Let the truth be ugly. Get up. Eddie sat down. The courtroom stood for him. Diddy, motionless and shaken, said nothing. In that moment, the former king of comedy didn't just testify. He may have rewritten history,